Hey everybody, it's Rose here from Getting Grounded in the Garden. It's a beautiful fall day here in southeast Pennsylvania, zone 7A. And what I would love to do is take you around my yard and show you all the activities that I do in the fall so that you can follow along with me and learn a few things about what to do in your yard. Now, you don't have to do everything that I do, but I just want to give you a variety of options to do at this time of year, and I offer you some little tidbits of information as we go along. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, let me tell you, all through the years I've tried so many different types of grass seeds, and I finally narrowed it down to this type here, Black Beauty by Jonathan Green. It was recommended by a few different people and I did a little research on it. It has a great combination of different fescue grasses, a couple different ryegrasses, and no weed seed. Actually, it's 0.02 weed seed, but I'm going on the recommendations of all the people who told me about this, and I'm hoping for the best results. So on the bag, you'll see directions, and you basically just follow them. Now, my lawn doesn't need a whole overhaul. I had that done last year because my yard was horrible. And so this year has been pretty good, but I do still have some bare spots, and there are some areas where the lawnmower kind of slid on the slope and left some bare patches. So I'm just going to show you how I do those today. Okay, here's my bare patches. I'm just taking a rake, going back and forth, raking up the soil a little bit. It's a good idea to get your lawn aerated each year, but I'm just not having that done this year. Okay, this area here looks fine. The soil looks pretty rich. I think there's some overflow from the mulch above that has run down the hill. But along here, it's pretty compacted, so I'm going to add a little topsoil just all along the whole area. The seeds need a little something to grab onto. Now, if I was doing a whole lawn or a whole big area of lawn, I would use a real spreader. But for today, I'm using my bare hand and just sprinkling the grass seed over the bare spots. It's okay if you get the grass seed into the areas that have some seed, because overseeding can add to the thin grass that you already have. And the grand finale, I have a whole bale of straw here. Notice I have it in a sheet. This happens to be a fitted sheet. It wasn't tied very tightly, so I had to figure a way to keep it together. So I'm going to spread this over the grass seed. This has two purposes, actually three. Keeps the birds from eating the seeds. It keeps the rain from hitting the seeds and making them just slide right down the hill before they grab hold of the soil. And it lets my lawn guys know not to mow this area. One important thing is you don't want to treat your lawn with any fertilizers or chemicals while you're growing seed. You need 4 to 6 weeks to let the grass seed grow to about 3 inches high before you can add any chemicals to it or mow it. After I spread the straw, I just step on it. Oh, one more thing about the straw. As it decomposes, it adds a little compost to the top of the soil. And if it's not raining out, you'll want to water your grass seed twice a day. If you can't do that, do it at least once a day in the morning, either by hand or if you have a sprinkler system. And the important thing to know is that a good long drink is better than short drinks. The longer drinks will help to establish longer roots, remember that. This is the time to transplant peonies if you're going to do it. Actually, we're a little late. It should have been done by the end of September. So these two peonies here have not been flowering over the past few years, and I know why, because this maple tree right here has grown out and shades them too much, and peonies need a lot of sunlight. So I'm going to try to transplant this one here. I suspect I might have a little trouble because the roots from the maple are right here. So let's see how we do. As you can see, I'm using a pitchfork, not a shovel. It's a little better for this kind of job. Oh, I have a little support system in here. Let me get this out. One of my homemade doodads. Okay, I'm angling straight down, going all around. Yes, I could tell already I might not be able to do this because the maple roots are right here. And it's hard to work in between them. Let me keep trying. Okay, this should be a lesson in planting the right plant in the right place. I should have known better planting these peonies next to this maple tree, but I wasn't thinking. So it's just going to be a little extra work right now, digging around these maple tree roots. Sometimes in gardening, just like life, you need to just find an alternative plan. One thing I could do is just leave the peony here. I mean, it does provide a nice green plant all season long, but I'd like to find a new home for it and let it flower, because that's why most people plant peonies. It's really stuck in there. Okay, I'm going to tap it. I don't know if I got deep enough to get all of these roots. I want to cut off the stalks at this point. I needed those stalks there so that I could pull the plant out. Try to get as much dirt off as possible. And you will see that some of the roots will just separate on their own. You know what? I think I'll leave this one all together. Keep shaking. See if I can divide this anywhere. You could possibly get more than one plant when you dig it out. I don't think I want to pull anymore. Get as much of the dirt out as possible. And I want to show you something. See these little eyes, these three little white structures there? When you replant this, you want to make sure that these eyes are no more than 2 inches deeper than the top of the soil line. It is really important to have at least 3 of these little eyes in any section of peony roots that you replant. This one I can only find 3, so I would keep all of this together. This could probably be planted separately. And what you do is you plant these in a nice fresh new hole in a nice sunny spot. Add a little bit of bone meal to the soil. So remember, peonies love bone meal, sun, and they like moisture, but they don't like to sit in wet soil. So it's good to have them on a little slope, on a little higher land, and they will be sure to perform for you. I'm not planting these in my yard. I'm giving them to one of my sisters. So if I was planting them, I would show you how, but you get the idea. I tried to get this other peony out. It was too difficult to work around the roots, so I decided to leave this one here. And that brings us to planters. Okay, this planter is getting old. Look at that. It's all mildewed. It's plastic. So this one I will definitely empty into the compost pile. I'm pretty sure I have compost added into the potting soil on this one. So I can dump this. If it was just potting soil, I would not put it in the compost. It would add no value. But in this case, I'm pretty sure I did have some compost in here. So let's look at this one. I never did plant in here this year. Same situation. It's old, it's plastic, it has mildew on it. I'm just going to empty it. And I think next spring I will paint these 3 planters to match. It's always nice to have 3 matching planters. So I'll clean them up really well this year and put them in the garage. Okay, do you see this planter here? I just had this sitting in this little shade garden for a few years actually. I started with a baby fern and now it has grown. Doesn't look too great now because it's preparing for dormancy. But what I think I'll do with this planter is remove the ferns, transplant them to another part in this little shade garden around me under this pine tree. And then I'm going to replenish the soil. Okay, so let me just put it on its side, dump it out over here on the side, and I will get to transplanting that. But for now, I want you to see that I left some of the soil here, and what I'm going to do is add some amendments to it so that next spring when I want to plant something in here, it'll be really beautiful soil. That's really the key to any gardening, is to have really nice healthy soil. You need a home for your plants to grow so those roots can spread. Okay, so I have some of the remaining soil. I'm adding a little bit of peat moss to it, a little bit of cedar bark, shred it. Okay, mix those up a little. I have some cheap topsoil here. I'm just adding some topsoil. And then the magic ingredient, some real compost from my compost pile. If you don't have your own, you can always just use humus or manure. Make sure it's aged before you use any kind of manure. By the way, they're finding that chicken manure is actually the best one for gardens. So you're going to mix that up. And I could let it sit here if I wanted to, but since this is a really nice ceramic pot, I'm going to put it in my garage and let the magic happen. So you have all these options of things that you can do with your planters. You know what? I'm adding a little soil right from the ground into the planter as well. Okay, so let's get these little ferns planted right into the earth now. Okay. I'm just keeping it in 2 different sections. Putting it down in here and I'm wishing it a happy winter. See you in the spring. As much as I hate to see this go, it's time to plant some new plants in here. Time for some new fall plants. This mum is called Majesty Red. Let's try putting that right there. That looks like a good height for it. And then we're going to put this celosia next to it. Right in here. I have another type of celosia to give a little height here. Be careful with them, they're breakable. And then I'll put some soil back in between the plants. Okay, it all came together. 2 wreaths, 2 planters, and then I have 2 extra mums and some pumpkins. And right now you can't see all the color because it is late September. And I didn't want to get mums that were in full bloom yet, but in a few weeks it'll be very colorful and beautiful. And make sure you take time to decorate. Fall is a great time for decorating. Look, every time I go to my hose, I see this cute little scarecrow here. Okay, take a look at this huge plant here I have in this planter on the deck. I would think about bringing it indoors, but it's just way too big. So I'm going to try something here. I'm not sure actually if this is a mandevilla or a diplodenia. I think it's a diplodenia because it's bigger and fuller. What I'm going to try to do is to cut the tips and root them in water, and then hopefully transfer them into soil, watch them grow, and then by next spring or summer I can plant new plants outside on the patio. Geraniums. It's the same method actually that you would use for your petunias and geraniums, so keep that in mind. If you have any petunias right now that are still flowering and geraniums that look nice and healthy and you hate to say goodbye to them, you can either bring the whole plant inside for the winter and take care of it. You can cut it back to a smaller version and watch it grow over the winter, or you can take cuttings from it. So this would be the mother plant. We would find a tip, and from that tip we would strip the leaves, take the flower stem off, keep stripping down, and only leave a few leaves at the top. This here looks like it was ready to vine again. I'm going to cut that off at that point. Take these off. So what I want to make sure I'm doing is cutting right below a node. See these 2 tiny buds sticking out here? I want to cut right below them, because instead of 2 leaves coming out when it's underwater, you should have 2 roots come out. That's where your roots will form. We might even see roots forming from all of these sets of buds. So let's give it a try. I've never done mandevilla or diplodenia before, but we will give it a try. So I'm going to take about 5 or 6 stem cuttings here. I'll be back. Okay, here we go. I have 5 cuttings here. They're all basically the same. I took them from the tips. I stripped the leaves down, only left a few at the top. Actually, I think this one here, I need to snip some of these leaves in half. We don't want the energy going into the flowers or the vines, only into the roots right now. Boy, these are pretty sticky. They have a milky sap in them. But let's give it a try. And that's something, you shouldn't be afraid to do these things at home. Now, like I said, you can do petunias and geraniums this way. So why not try doing other plants this way? I already did a coleus last week, and that has tons of roots on it. So let's see what we get here. Okay, if you have irises in your yard and they're not performing well, it might be due to a few reasons. They might not be getting enough sun. They might be sitting too low. Irises do like to be planted up higher on a hill or a slope or a raised bed so that they have great drainage underneath. Another very important thing is that Irises really need to be divided every 2 or 3 years if you want to keep getting big, tall, beautiful flowers. So let me show you how to do it. All right, I'll carefully lift the whole clump and put it on its side. At this point, I can cut the leaves to about 6 inches tall. I didn't want to do that to start. Now we are dividing these. We're not transplanting them. We're just dividing them and putting them back in the same spot, but separating them. Pulling out any extra weeds from here. One thing I should mention, if you see any tall flower stalks like this on your plants, you might want to cut them off after they're finished blooming. This way, more energy will go down into the roots. Okay, what do we have here? We have, if I jiggle or massage it all the way around, release the dirt, soil, we will start seeing the rhizomes. You want to try to separate them with your hands if possible. See here, when you start seeing the rhizomes above the ground, that's a signal that your irises need some help. And look at these all close together here. We want to try to separate them with our hands. If that doesn't work, we can go in. I'm just doing it on a cutting board right now. You can go in and just cut. You need a sharp cut to divide the bulbs, okay? The sharper the cut, the less chance of spreading any bacteria or problems. Look at that nice worm in there. So basically, the iris rhizomes were too packed in together, and they didn't have enough space to do their own thing. Just like people. People need their space, and sometimes they have to get out of the house and do their own thing. You basically want to inspect your rhizomes, make sure you don't have any holes in them or any discoloration or softness. Make sure they're good, still good and healthy. If they did have problems, I suggest you throw them in the trash. Don't put them in your compost pile. Oh, this is kind of mushy here. I'm gonna take that out and discard it. I'll get my shovel and dig a nice wider hole here. You don't have to go too deep, but go deep enough so that you know the roots will be able to go down and spread out pretty easily. You don't want any compaction down in there. Now, there was a time when I would have added some bone meal or some compost right into the soil, but recent science is suggesting now that you should not do that. You should apply your fertilizer or bone meal or compost around the whole clump of irises after you are finished. Actually, the best time to fertilize would be right after they bloom. So we really don't even have to do it right now. Okay, here's the trick. See how this rhizome has the leaves coming out on one side? That is the side you want to face the direction of where people are viewing your plants from. So I'm going to put this in here. Well, first of all, I'm going to build a mound. I'm going to lay the iris on top of the mound and put some soil around it. See how I'm covering the roots here? I want to make sure the roots are covered like that. Irises like to be raised a little bit. Here's another little mound. I'm letting the fan face towards you. That's where the viewers will see this plant. I'm resting it on the mound, and I'm putting the backfill soil right over the roots. Another mound. These broke off. That's okay. As with most bulb plants, you know what? I'm throwing this one out. It's just not looking right. It looks like something was eating part of that bulb. That's trash. Okay. Here's our fan. Putting it in the mound, spreading the roots out a little. This really does help. I hope that next spring I'll see a lot more flowers than I've seen in the past. I would say it's probably been at least 7 years since I've done this. It seems like I let a lot of things go, and I have. You know, I was raising my kids. They played hockey. We had the hockey life. I wasn't home enough to work on my projects. You know how it is for a mom. And so I let things go. I only did like the bare necessities. And then when my kids graduated and moved out of the house, actually I still have one in college. Then when they started growing up, they didn't need me as much. Then I got back out here in the garden. Then before you knew it, my mother became ill quite a few times in the past few years. So I've neglected my plants, and that might happen to you in your life too, and that's okay. They will keep living for the most part, and you can come out and make the changes that you would like when you can. So you get the idea, right? I'll just keep these together right here. Another mound. Okay, I don't want to cover the leaves at all. I want the base of the leaves to be right above the soil level. Now, one way you can check the depth of your planting is you can take a flat tool like this shovel, and you can see that the bottom part of the shovel should be level with the base of the leaves, just like that. So we will fill in where we need to fill in with soil, not with mulch. Mulch comes later around the top if you like, but not right over the plants, not right over the bulbs. Around the whole clump, just like you would spread the fertilizer, around the whole clump. After this, you give them a little watering each day for a week or two to get them established. They will do the work in preparing for dormancy and then for reblooming next spring. I love irises because they have a nice tall structure in your yard. They're also great for hiding things behind it. I have irises all across the top of my hill here in groups. And up there on the hill, I have a whole bunch of weeds that you can't see because these irises are hiding them. They're awesome. If you have a nice bed with a lot of shorter plants, it's nice to put 1 or 2 of these in there just to draw the eye up a little and give some variety in the viewer's eye. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you can find some time to get out and divide your irises. We're not going to transplant bulbs right now. We'll do that in 3 or 4 weeks. You need to make sure that your leaves of your cannas or your elephant ears or other bulbs are falling over, wilting, and they look like they need help. They look like they're really done for the season. So I'll put out a video in a few weeks for that. So you do one section at a time, as many as you can. If you find that you have way too many bulbs, you can always share them with friends who might want them. If you don't have enough takers, then you can offer them to churches or nursing homes or other places that might need some help with their landscaping. Usually there's a gardener in a group somewhere who will take them. So I'm going to put all of my extras today in this bucket here and see if I have anyone who wants them. They're all purple, bearded iris. Okay, I'm in my neighbor's yard right now. She has a whole row of astilbes. These bloom in the early summer with beautiful light pink plumes, and I would love to have them in my yard. So let me show you how to divide these. Okay, for these I will use a shovel. I want to get right under there, under the whole clump, and these are pretty easy. This is beautiful soil here, and look at that, came right up. I'm going to hold my shovel down, lift this up, shake it a little, get the extra soil off. Turn it on its side. Roll it over a little. Keep shaking off the soil. And here we go. I'm going to take my little digger with the serrated edge and start cutting where I see a division already. I think my spearhead spade shovel would do a better job, but this is the one I brought over. So we'll just work with it. This is a tough one. So it turned out that my little digger was much better than the shovel in this case. This will be going in my yard. So this will go right back in the same soil, in the same hole. And it has enough time now to acclimate those roots into the soil and be nice and cozy for the winter. Pack it in. And there you go. I actually got 5 pieces of my neighbor's astilbe. This looks huge, but when I took it from the plant, you couldn't even notice. Her plants were so big. So, just going to massage my roots a little bit. I actually planted 4 already. Here's my 5th one. What you do is make sure your hole is nice and big and wide, okay? I always like to think, could I fit 3 of these in the hole? Then that's big enough. Put it in. I tried to make it deep enough, and now I see that it's too deep. You just want the crown or the bottom of the stems to be right at soil level. So let me backfill a little bit. That's okay, because the soil is nice and loose for those roots to spread out. A little bit more. It's always better to plant a little too high than a little too low, because you can always go back later if it's too high and add a little soil around it. But if it's too low, it might get drenched with water and not survive. So here we go. Let's use our shovel here. Make sure it's level. I think that's good. If we go straight across, it works. Okay, we're gonna backfill. When I dig the holes, I try to first separate the mulch from the soil. Shovel that out to the sides, so when you're finished, you can get some of that mulch and put it back around the plant. Press down a little. That looks good. Make sure it's nice and straight. Okay. Push the rest of your soil around it, and then try to grab some of that mulch and put it over the pile to keep it moist and keep the weeds away. I will give them all some water for the next week or two. I'll keep my eye on them. And then after that, they will be on their own for the rest of the season. Hopefully I'll see them bloom as beautiful as hers next. I think they bloom in the late spring, early summer. This would also be the same way you would divide your hostas and some of your grassy plants, like your Hakoni grass, the Acorus grass, Liriope, anything that has a large root mass. If you see one tap root coming down, you can't divide it. Okay. You definitely need to water all of your transplants and all of your recently planted plants in the garden, including trees and shrubs. But you can take a break now from watering anything else in your yard. It's a natural process for plants to slowly shut down for dormancy in the winter. So you can take a break now from all that watering. Don't worry about those other established plants. I have a plant here that's called bugleweed, or in botanical terms it's called Ajuga reptans. The word reptans means spreading or creeping. So that's basically what it does. This plant has some nice roots underneath. You can see this tiny little plant has a nice root system. They're spreading out to the sides. They're called stolons. And also on many of these bugleweed plants, you'll see these above ground stolons. Let me find one. You can see these above ground stolons that spread above ground, and when they land on the soil, they can create new roots and whole new plants as they go along. So some people love these plants and some don't, because they can get out of control. I have mine in an area here that gets a lot of sun, and these are basically shade-loving plants, so maybe that's one reason they're not growing that rampantly. And I do keep my eye on them, but I've seen lawns that tend to become overgrown with these. So I did cut some out along this edge here. I also want to take some out from the middle, because as you see, it's becoming dense. And with many plants, when they become too dense, that inhibits their growth. So I have a nice little pile. Let me get a few more. This way I can fill in this whole other area of my yard with these, so that I can have a complementary purple wave of flowers over there. I had an empty spot here. I took some plants already and put them in there. So basically, you can look around your yard and find the plants that you would love to spread out around different areas of your yard and transplant them. Just keep in mind, you don't want to dig up any plants that haven't bloomed yet. We know these bloomed in the spring, so this is a great time to move them right now. We're not interrupting any flowering. In addition to ground cover plants, you can also transplant other perennials right now, or some grasses. So not only do you want to look in your yard, ask your neighbors if you can take some of their plants and you can give them some of yours, and then this way everyone will beautify their yards. And actually, the more plants, the more real desirable plants in your yard that you have, the less weeds you'll get, and that's always a great thing. Check out all of these hellebores. Hellebores are great plants. They're evergreen and they bloom in late winter, let's say February, and the flowers stay all the way until sometimes July. Well, I did not plant these here. They grew on their own. What we're finding is that these plants are very prolific and they will spread and hop around your garden. So in some cases it's awesome if you want a nice ground cover, and in other cases you just have to stay on top of them. You can either transplant them or just remove them. I am collecting all of these right here and some others that I have for a friend and for my mother-in-law. So here we go. So you can cut off the leaves. Save yourself a little space in your bucket or your bag, whatever you're putting them in. Actually, you should cut the leaves back when they look tattered, either at this time or after they bloom. If you cut the leaves back, you'll see the flowers. You'll be able to see the flowers better. Look at these leaves. Holy moly. Okay. Just want you to see the roots. Oh, this one is stuck on a rock. Okay, there we go. It's a nice, healthy clump of roots. We're just going to shake it a little bit, take off the excess soil. You can put them all in a box or a bucket. Look at this tiny little baby growing right in here. I'm seeing all these baby hellebores around the yard now. Okay. Hellebores are supposedly shade-loving plants, but I've seen them grow in bright sun as well. Sometimes these plants surprise us in the way that they are so adaptable. But that's not to say that you should not plant the right plant in the right place. It's very important. If you spend a lot of money for your plants, let's just say you buy a fern plant. Most people know ferns grow best in shade. Well, imagine if you planted that in the sun. Would it survive? Most likely not. So you need to read those plant labels and always consider where the plants originated. If you know they originated in the Mediterranean, that means they probably like hot, sunny, dry conditions. If you know, like the Colorado spruce originated in the Colorado mountains, they love high altitude, sunny, mountainous conditions. If you plant it out here in the southeast in a spot that's shady, it probably will eventually die. So you really want to consider everything it tells you on the label. You might even want to research your plants before you buy them, and you'll have more success in your garden. If you do this, you'll most likely have less problems with your plants as well. If they're in the right place, then they're stronger and healthier, and then insects and diseases are not so likely to attack them. So stick with your natives or with plants that suit the conditions in your places, in your yard or garden. You know, I kept walking past this Nicotiana, this tobacco plant here, admiring it. I love the big, fluffy, soft leaves on it and that lighter color. It adds a nice contrasting color to many gardens. Well, anyway, I keep noticing these seed heads here, so I went and got some baggies. See if I can get any seeds. Oh, there's a ton of tiny little seeds in there. Okay, let's see if this one has any. No, this one was empty, but I do have another plant. Let me go find it. Okay, here we go. Look at this one. It really spread out here, and this location is a little shady, so that shows me I can plant this back in this area again. it's considered an annual, so I didn't want to totally say goodbye to it. So let's see if we can get some seeds from here. They look a little too dry. Not sure. See, oh, I got a whole bunch they sprinkled right in there. If you can look in the baggie, you'll see these teeny tiny little seeds at the bottom there. It's amazing these teeny tiny seeds can create, and I could tell that one's empty. These teeny tiny seeds can create big plants like these. Yeah, I'm feeling some. You can see some have holes already. Now, I think I got what was available. So, all right, I think I have enough. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be sowing so many seeds this winter, and I hope you can join me for that. Even though we covered seed collecting in my last video, I just wanted to show you that there were still more available, and they're nice and dry right now. Last year, I made a lasagna bed in my friend's garden right here. That was in the springtime, so let's take a look at it now. Of course, I didn't bring my shovel. All right, so you can still see it has mulch on top. There are some weeds that grew in it. If I had my shovel with me, that would help. But I did dig a little hole in here with my hand, and you can see underneath the mulch and the weeds, there is some beautiful rich soil. Now, before we started this, remember it was just grass and weeds in this area. So this time of year, oh, just a minute. Look, we have a little baby Nandina plant. Actually, I was thinking Nandinas might be nice in this area. And the original plan was to move some of these Acorus grasses from the right side of the house and bring them over here. But we could do a combination of Nandinas and that light green grass. So I wanted you to know this is the time of year that you could start your own lasagna bed. It's very simple. You don't have to dig at all. You just make layers of whatever you have. You might have some mulch, some newspapers or cardboard, some soil, some peat moss, some grass clippings, some scraps from your kitchen, only produce or eggshells or coffee grinds, things like that, shredded paper. You just layer it all and give it a few months, like about 4 months, and then when it's all said and done, you have a nice new garden bed without digging at all. You can check out the video that I made when I created the lasagna bed back in May. If you go to my YouTube channel, go to Just Us Grown Up Girls, 5 separate words, and then look under my playlist called Getting Grounded in the Garden. I did a whole video on how to make these lasagna beds. The best time to start these beds is spring or fall, because if you start it in the spring, you can plant in the fall. If you start one in the fall, you can plant in the spring. Spring bulbs. I won't be planting any this year, so I'm not showing you how to do that. But the important thing is to read the package instructions. Get them in now or very soon, and please follow the directions. The depth is the most important thing. If it says 6 inches, make sure your soil is 6 inches. Don't include your mulch in that measurement. Oh, and stick to the ones that you see growing in your area. Like, I would love to have some of these tulips right here, but I know the deer eat them. There's no way I can keep up with the deer. They think they're little gumdrops. So look around, see what other people are planting, and you're probably pretty safe. Keep the bulbs, most of them high up on a hill or in a raised bed. I don't have that much compost this year, so I'm being selective as to where I want to spread it. Now, if you take a look at this little southern magnolia here, I planted it this summer. It was a gift from my sister, and it was struggling a little bit, so it looks pretty good now, but I'm going to go around the edges, clear that mulch away, and just sprinkle some compost in there. It's as simple as that. It's amazing what a little bit of this black gold will do to the soil. The microorganisms will get in there and keep doing their job of eating all the components in the soil, and then the worms will come along and they will all work together to aerate the soil and continue to create a nice structure in there and lots of nutrients for this magnolia. Let me go put some compost around some other shrubs. I don't know what I was thinking years ago, 13 years ago when we bought this house. I had young children and I said, oh, just put all stone in the front where the mulch is, then we won't have to weed so often. So the landscaper put a landscape fabric down and then all of this red stone. And I do like the neat appearance of it, but through the years, being the gardener that I am, I kept coming out here and fussing and digging holes through the landscape fabric and putting plants in here and there. So I still get weeds popping through all the time, you know. And not only do they pop through because I made holes in the landscape fabric, but because the birds drop seeds and they just grow everywhere. So I had the stone replenished last year because to remove it all, it would have been painstakingly difficult and expensive, and I didn't want to go through that. So, just goes to show you, if you consider putting stone down like this, or even landscape fabric, think it out. Think about what situation you will have 5 to 10 years from now, because it does make life difficult. Now, when the guys put the stone down last year, they put it right up to the crowns of the plants. I wasn't home that day and I wasn't supervising, so right now, at least in this case, I'm just doing this cherry laurel here. This is a spreading cherry laurel called autoleucin. So it does need some space for its roots to spread out and for these stalks to come out. They're like vines and they might rest down and layer on the ground and create new stalks that come up. So I can see this doesn't look too healthy, so here I am. Long story short, I'm putting some compost all around it, and then I will come back and put some mulch in this hole. But you never want to put the mulch or the compost right up to the butt of the crown. Keep it around the edges. It will do the job. I know that was a lot of talking, but I really want you to consider that landscape fabric or the stones like this. I see some parts here that don't look too healthy, so I'm going to prune them off since I'm here. Look how they're dried out. They're just sucking energy from the plant. There we go. I love the dark, lush color of these cherry laurels, and they are evergreen. So whenever I can find a good evergreen, I will grab it up. I'm not really fond of the bare areas in the wintertime like some people, although I do love the blooms in the spring from those deciduous plants and trees. Okay, there we go. I'll come back with the mulch. Okay, one of those dreaded jobs, weeding. We need to do one of our final weeding sessions all throughout the yard as we go along. And if you have some mulch, it's a good idea to cover any areas that you do weed. Really does help control them. The stalks on these salvias here are dried out, so it's time for me to clean up just by breaking them off, tossing them into the compost pile. If they had seed heads on them, I would leave them as long as possible so that the birds could eat the seeds, but these don't have any seeds. Of course, there's always time for cleaning up. I found these 2 grill covers under my deck. We haven't had a grill in a while, so we don't need these. In the trash. Take a look at this planter. I made the mistake last year of leaving this outside. Lesson learned here. Don't leave any nice ceramic pots outside in the winter. And the last thing on my list is to take pictures. If you have a certain area of your yard that you were really happy with this year, take pictures of it so you can remember next year and the following years what it looked like and how to duplicate it. Take pictures at public gardens or at other people's properties. Save some magazine pictures. Go online and save those pictures. Keep them all in a file. This way you can create gardens based on what you like. Remember, I suggested starting a journal back in May. Well, I haven't been too good about it either, but keeping a gardening journal is a great idea. You can write down when you plant things, when they start budding, when they flower, what was successful, what kind of fertilizers, or when did you add compost. All those things you can write in your journal so that you can keep a record of your successes and failures. Actually, I hate to say failures because even those are learning lessons, just like in life. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you can take some of these ideas and do them in your own yards, or just remember them for future use. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please push like, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so you can see my future videos. I do whatever I can to help you with your gardening, to make it easier and more interesting. Okay, see you next time.